not doing an English lesson, okay? Margaret, I don't care about you. By the way, Margaret, I got to say on behalf of everybody tonight, you look absolutely gorgeous, and the camera is more clearer tonight than ever, ever. Right. So we're going to start off by welcoming everybody tonight. We have got two new people to join us tonight. Emma and her dad, Richard, and Emma's an absolute nightmare. She's texted 12 times today, and I've not affected that one. So, uh,
Oh no, just be Dave.
I, Dave, I thought you were Richard.
No, I'm David.
Why have I been saying Richard?
I got well.
You can answer to anything, Carl.
I got your mail this morning, Richard Sinclair, and I thought, hello, who's he?
Where did I get Richard from? Anyway, right, okay. Obviously, that's a mistake. We'll have to update. So
Yeah.
it's David and not Richard. Oh, hang on a minute. This isn't right because we've got another David. You are Richard, okay? David.
Well, I'll be Richard. I don't know.
You're Richard, right? So we got Drina, we got Margaret, we got Judith, who you've met, and we've got David and Andy, and there's about four others who are usually here tonight who are not here tonight, sadly. So I want to welcome you all tonight. I am very actually I'm very refreshed over the fact that I sold one of my cars today. The guy turned up. He turned up. He said that car's such a mess, but he bought it. So which is great. I got to say, Michelle, your coffee's there by the kettle, right? So we're gonna talk about anyone's news in a moment, but I've got a really nice piece of news for you all. This is to do with the fact that let's just show you an image. I got a really nice piece of news. I'm going to show you an image, and then we'll talk about the Welsh flag thing, and we'll talk about the show. So we've got a load of things to talk about. So show, and we'll talk about the flag. So we're going to go to this image now. We're going to show you something, and it's going to be where is it? Hang on, is it here? No, it's not. I haven't. Hang on a minute. I haven't got the image to show you, but I'm going to go. Let's go to my emails a minute, and I want to show you this. I don't care what dodgy emails you see on the screen. Roger, you've just joined. Brilliant. So hang on.
Yorkshire.
Right. So here we go. We're going to go through the emails. Got to show you this image because it's really important that I show you this.
What?
There. Roger, shut up.
What?
We've got something very interesting to tell you in a minute. I'm just putting these emails up on the line. Oh, there we go. And it's not going to look spectacular, but we're going to show you this image. No, not that.
About 38 screens.
Right there. Are you seeing this?
Oh yeah.
Right now, so I'm glad I got to this. Sorry, it wasn't on this device. Now, I don't know if I told you. I don't know if I told you guys, but I as you know, we saved that Second World War tower in Barry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite proud of that. We had it donated by Associated British Ports, and it's a Second World War tower. Not this one. It's a big concrete tower, which I'm not going to go through the rigmarole of getting the image.
The building, well, the flat's gone up.
And we saved that tower, and Peter gave a donation towards it. He was no longer with us. Peter helped save the tower, and it's now in Cowbridge. And basically, at the time, there was another building like this. There was two gates houses out of four still standing in 2022. But I didn't save the other one deliberately because it would have meant that we would have lost the tower. So I allowed the other building to be demolished, right, which was like this. However, this does survive, and basically what we did, we put up a little campaign thanks to Kate Phillips, who has sometimes joined these classes, and we've saved this building. It's now a grade 2 listed building. It's taken us a year and a half to get it listed. It's protected, and this building is the last building to survive that was part of the D-Day landing base of the 6th of June that supplied troops, rations, tanks, the armaments for the D-Day landings. So this building is the last of the entire military complex in Barry, right? And we have saved it. And I think that, and it's also thanks to you guys for supporting Archaeology Cymru over the years. And we've managed to save this building, which I think is absolutely amazing. So I'm going to go back to me on the screen.
Yeah, what's in it?
And I'm now going to tell you about the live show. Roger, you missed a great live show in Chepstow because two of my daughters were there. One of them was on stage, and my eldest daughter, Bethan, turned up from Bristol, which was absolutely great. We filmed it as well, so the whole live show from Barry has been filmed. And what we've decided, we will have other shows in the valleys, and we will have the other show in other places over the next few years because we've got all the canvases. The only difference that what we will do, we'll have about 30 odd pictures of archaeological sites on stage on easels next time. This time we only had about 15 canvases, so next time we're going to have about 30 and we're going to put them on the stage. And the next time it's going to work, the assistant that I've got on stage, will probably be my daughter again, Kerry Ann. She will say, oh, look, why don't we discuss this image, and we will discuss it, right? So that it went well. So we were going to have 5 shows. We decided to just have the 3, so it was good to end it in Chepstow. I finally met Judith, and that's when Judith gets back up on screen with her shirt on, and we
changed it.
You changed it.
Put it back on, will you?
She's going to get that. Whilst she's gone off, we're going to ask David if he's got any news this week.
No, sorry.
Okay, Roger.
Well, there's something been announced on an Iron-Age find in Milton Peak, North Yorkshire.
Sorry, I'm keeping it for best. I didn't want to get it mucked up.
Well, you get your mic on now. Oh, there it is. That flag.
What flag?
Can you see it? Yeah.
No.
Yep.
What is it?
Can you see that flag? Move away from the camera. Now that is actually the true flag of Cymru Wales, right? That was the last flag to be used by a king of Cymru Wales. That was David ap Griffith, and who was the last king of Wales, who was hung, drawn, and quartered. One of the first leaders to be hung, drawn, and quartered by Edward I. And he was hung, drawn, and quartered. I think it was in Chester in October 1283. So that flag represented the last true flag of Wales that very few people fly. And we've decided to have it printed on T-shirts, and it's actually the logo of the production company Wildfire Cymru Productions. So we're proud to actually be selling that on T-shirts. There we go. I thought I'd tell you about that. Right, Roger. I do believe that this find that Roger's just mentioned is something that I can tell you about now. We won't put the images up online, but I will tell you about this because this has been sent to me by Goff a few times this week. And it said, Iron Age hoard found in North Yorkshire could change Britain's history. And actually, do you know what? Maybe what we should do is look this up on the screen and see if we can find this article. Would that be a good idea? Yes, it would be. And this was a place called Melnsbury, right? Melnsonby. So we're going to get on to here now, and hopefully, there's me on screen twice. So it's referred to as Iron Age, and this is new to me today as well, so I haven't really read this. So Iron Age hoard. Yorkshire, and whoever's talking in the background, other than Roger, who's doing my editing, right? So Guardian. So there's the Guardian, and this is the Guardian. Iron Age hoard found. Oh, go away! I don't want to give a donation now. Hang on. There we go. Iron Age hoard found in North Yorkshire could change Britain's history. Now look at that object there. Look at that. It's just basically saying, more than 800 objects and a statue of Lloyd George unearthed near Melnsbury, show the North was definitely not a backwater 2,000 years ago. So if we just play this little bit of a video. And
Oh,
guys, be very wary of talking whilst we do this now. The screen's gone black. This is an advert, a 12-second advert about balls, which I don't really want to see. But obviously, that's life. We've got to put up with adverts, and it should go on now. So these are the
Maybe not.
objects, and it says one of the largest and most important Iron Age holes. Look at these objects here. They haven't been washed. An array of everything really, and there's 800 objects. I've not seen this at all myself. And look at that. Archaeologists found parts from wagons or chariots. And this is again amazing, what they found there. I can't even process this because I've not looked at this, but you've got this amazing archaeology. And found in 2021. Can you imagine a metal detector enthusiast found in part of this? And it's like, oh my God, there's just too much. It's 800 objects.
Mm.
Absolutely,
it's been held at York.
absolutely amazing. So, Roger, when you saw this, what did you think? Rog,
What's that?
when you saw this, what did you think?
Well, it's quite surprising. When they said it'll change our knowledge of history with the Iron Age and all this, they didn't say much more. They left it dangling there. And they mentioned one thing which maybe you not, I don't know, a four-wheeled vehicle. But before now it's just two, I guess.
Yeah,
So
hang on a minute. Hang on, let me stop you a minute. Didn't we do a four-wheeled vehicle last week from our site in Germany?
Yes, that's right. That's why I thought,
Yeah,
well, what's new?
So now, Roger, we're finding them in Britain. So this is really,
For us.
I love David to bits, but last week he said everything everything that you said tonight would have been credible if there was another site like it. But now what we are finding, David, we're finding other evidence in other parts of the world, and I've got another site for us to look at. So in other words, what we are doing, you guys, is we're seeing an explosion of Iron Age archaeology that is getting bigger and bigger in our understanding. And there we go. Andy, they always say this is the biggest hoard ever, right? And then suddenly you find another one.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. They're saying this dating back to the time of Emperor Claudius, and we're talking about AD 43. The Briganti still held sway over this landscape. Let's just read this now. But before we do that, we're talking about Cartaman Jewel of the North, and the Brigantes. We're talking about this sort of female matriarchal society. So the objects include parts from wagons, chariots, including 28 iron tires. There we go, the iron tires that go around the wood, elaborate harnesses for at least 14 horses, bridle bits, ceremonial spears, and two beautiful ornate cauldrons, one of which was probably used as a wine mixing bowl. And they will be able to tell that if they sample it. But this is all new stuff. This is all. Look at that. Yeah, you could squint your eye and you're on the set of Lord of the Rings. Well, I might be, but this is all sort of really Iron Age, sort of J.R.R. Tolkien-y type stuff. This is where he based his stuff on the Iron Age and so on to get to the Lord of the Rings and the Anglo-Saxon stuff as well. And again, finding a hoard or collection of 10 objects is unusual. It's exciting, but finding something, obviously, we got 800 objects. We were not expecting it. I think for everybody on the team, we were just lost for words after securing £120,000 worth of funding, including the removal of one large block of tangled metal objects that may have been in a bag together. What I want to do is explain that what you do, you excavate around the sample, the tangled metal objects. And you have it as a block, and then you put a board underneath it, and you lift that up, and you take it to the laboratory, and you do it, and you do the work there. This is what they're talking about with that. So we've got horse harnesses again. You can't underestimate this, and I really wish maybe I might do a little bit more Iron Age before we get into the Roman period, because I'm at the end of this now, the Iron Age stuff, and now we're getting more stuff, right? And it's just like I don't think I should leave it yet. We're not leaving it tonight either. So we've got more
No,
more remains associated with wagons and chariots. Go on, Anne wants to say something.
no, I don't.
I thought you
Apologies
did.
for being late.
Oh, don't apologise for being late, Anne. You can deal with me when I see you when I'm in Cumbria, and I'll tell you off. Right. So horse harnesses pulling the wagons or chariots were beautifully decorated with coral, coloured glass, with the vehicle, these chariots, four, two wheels, whatever. And again, this idea of glass, if it's a certain color of glass, where has it come from? It's come from the Middle East. It's come from Egypt, So a coral, there you go. We do have coral in Britain, but it's not British coral. It's Mediterranean coral. So that's come a long way. Coral from the Black Sea. There you go. So they would have looked incredible. It just emphasizes that these people had real status and real wealth. And obviously, these objects, which are made of iron, bronze, and gold, and so all these things, it's just an amalgam. Some people have regarded the North as being impoverished compared to the Iron Age of the South of Britain. Well, isn't that the case today? Anyway, and nothing's changed, but I don't think we should say that about the past. Carta Queen of the Brigantes, was a very powerful leader, and maybe one thing that I'm missing in these presentations is to actually look at these figures like Carta look at these figures like Caraticus, look at these figures like Boudicca before we even think about talking about the Romans. Maybe that's what we should do. Maybe that's an angle before we go straight into the Romans. So they challenge our way of thinking and show the North is definitely not a backwater in the Iron Age. No, I'm not saying that. Maybe that's what people thought, but we're not saying that at all in these presentations. It's just as interconnected, powerful, and wealthy as Iron Age communities in the South and elsewhere in Europe. We need to put that in there, elsewhere in Europe. Mm. And there we go. They're talking about the scale of the find of the material in it is completely unparalleled in this country. To have something like this from the north of England is exceptional. And it goes on to say it was one of those wow moments once in a lifetime. To be honest with you, I'm going to say this. I think Andy's been with me long enough to have heard this so many times before. Once in a lifetime find. So many archaeologists make that once in a lifetime find now because the technology has increased and we're finding so many things. So there's so many things left to find out there. And maybe, and I'm going to make a statement, maybe in Britain we found probably about 5% of all the treasures that are buried under our feet. And when I talk about treasures, I'm not talking just about artifacts. I'm talking about structures, other things. There's so much there, Obviously, there might not be another Stonehenge, but then again, people are saying that bits of things like that, we find whole cities still, Anyway, probably part of a network of elites across Britain. And there we go, Europe, Roman world. A lot of the material had been burnt, suggesting it may have been part of a funerary pyre of an elite person before being thrown in a ditch. Can you just think about those words, right? This is part of a funerary pyre, right? Lots of this stuff has been destroyed. So what was this stuff actually really, really like, And it's talking about the vehicles. They were going to have to spend years thinking, what did these vehicles look like? Where did they come from? And how did this all tie in? Now, this is quite disappointing there to put a value on this. The Malmesbury hoard is valued at just £254,000 when you get a coin hoard of silver coins and gold objects from Jersey worth 4 point whatever million. I'm not really interested in that. But finally, here we got, which will help us to better understand the fabric of our nation's history. You're talking about Julius Caesar leading expeditions into Britain and Claudius, and you're talking about, you kind of look at this material and ask, is this people thinking about the end of something, or are they thinking about the beginning of something? And the point to be made there, it should be and ask, are these people, but anyway, correcting the English there, but my English is poor as well. But the fact of the matter is, there's a point to be made there. The point to be made there is is there a point that we might be able to say that we didn't really need Rome? We could have done all this without Rome, and that's a really good point. So, Drina, anything you want to say tonight?
No, thank you.
Emma and David, number 2.
Do you want to say anything? No, don't think so. I texted you. I texted you earlier. I said it.
I know you did, but I ignored your text. You know I read it. So, David, anything? Oh, we've already asked David. David, we can say David's name all night. That's fine. Margaret, can I ask you something? I got scribbled down Margaret Crannog. Was I supposed to be looking at Crannogs this week as well?
Oh, I just said I wonder if there were Crannogs in Europe.
Right. Okay. Maybe I'm going to just answer that question after the break. I didn't get that. I couldn't work that bit out. But anyway, no problem. Dave, Andy.
No, I was watching a program the other day that was really strange. It was based in Utah in the States, and it was saying that the theory was that actually some of the Aztecs, after Cortez had invaded, moved up into Utah, which I thought was interesting. They didn't provide a lot of evidence, but they did say that the tribes in the southern North America were all basically the same root of people. There are different tribes, obviously, but I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. That's quite a long way for them to have travelled as well. So
perhaps they were Mormons.
Well, that's where the Mormons ended up, yeah, and that was one of the reasons why they did end up there as well. But
so when you talk about the Pueblo builders in Nevada and you're talking about New Mexico, the dates that we get from that are roughly sort of around that time. So and I think there's this great diaspora. That's a nice word. There's this great diaspora of movement of people, and you know what we always sum this up is that 1 minute in Central America there was 10 million people living, and within a few decades there's like 1 million people living, and it's always obviously the Spanish brought them disease. Well, some of these people must have moved north and they must have moved south or to the Caribbean, or they must have gone somewhere else. They're not all dead. They didn't all die from diseases. And they would have, some people would have been sensible. They would have said, there's a city on fire over there, right? Let's just go north.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. I would like to have seen a bit more evidence. There was like odd little bits, odd items, and I thought they could have been collected and dropped at any time. I would like to have seen more. So.
And there's one thing to be said with the parallel with that, with the Nazca of South America. The Nazca weren't wiped out because of conquistadors and stuff. They disappeared before all that. So, and it's very likely to remember that Aztec civilization was on the brink of collapse. Right, so the point is, Andy, right? Whether it was Cortez or Pizarro with the Incas down south, Central American civilization was due to collapse, and they would have gone north anyway. So that's the way. So, anything from you? What's that?
Going back to that Iron Age hoard in Yorkshire. Could it have been Queen Cartimandua's funeral pyre? Because we don't know what happened to her, do we?
And the thing is, this is one of those things in history that not having a go, but when we do find something like this, we always want to attribute it to a great figure in history. And if it was the funeral pyre of her husband, or it was the funeral pyre of Cartimandua, that would be like finding Richard III 10 times over. So let's just maybe think about that. But they haven't done all that. There could be bits of bones in there. I haven't found it all yet. It's all concreted and stuff. And let's just give them time.
It's going to be displayed in York Museum, apparently.
Yes, I read that.
Eventually, and like, yeah, I think the comment made by Emma, I did read a message. Is this going to be the 1% of stuff that is displayed in the museums? And yeah, that's a good point. There's so much to be said for people being very resentful over museums having so much in their storerooms and us not being able to see it, and making that comment in my live show, actually in Ystrad, probably not so much in Chepstow. When I was in Ystrad for the live show, I remember saying to the audience, how many of you have seen this gold in Carmarthen Museum? And everybody said, we've never seen it. And I said, you're not allowed to see it because it's too delicate. The gold in Carmarthen Museum is not allowed to be put on display because it might be damaged by people looking at it. And that's the excuse that Pat was given when she wanted to see it. So even some of the bestest treasures in our museums are not on display. Nuts. Right, okay, then before we crack on, anything from you, Anne, or anything from you, Judith? Go for it.
The only thing I heard about it today, because I've listened to it on and off, but you may have covered this because I was late coming, but they said it was a matriarchal society.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't know you covered it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, this is what, I don't know who's saying that, but that's exactly what we've been saying the past few weeks. It was definitely yeah, we were doing that when you weren't here because something happened to you. But I don't know where Janice is tonight. It's a shame. I wanted her on.
Oh, dear. I'll give her a call. Maybe she's...
You should. Maybe she's forgotten. If you do give her a call,
she couldn't get on last week, if you remember. Because I'm late, I didn't know she wasn't. I'll go and give her a call, see if she can.
Yeah, but whatever you do, put your mic off, but just whatever. Anyway, Judith, anything from you before we crack on?
Only quickly about the Humber. It is absolutely huge, and it is tidal. And hundreds and thousands of years ago, the northeast coast was a lot further out into the sea than it is now. A lot of it is, even today, it's still being washed away. So parts of it will have been, well, even more recently than that. Every year it loses at least 5 or 6 feet, doesn't it? There's villages a couple of miles out that were all washed away. So at one time, not in the so distant future, so distant past, people were a lot closer to mainland Europe, much closer than Overland.
And don't forget the destructive floods in the 1950s around Great Yarmouth, which caused the death of nearly 500 people. So we forget that, and that's in recent memory, very recent memory. You know. So let's crack on, guys, because I partway through this, I got to transfer device thingamajigs because that's life. So we're gonna crack on, and we're going to service the needs of part of last week, and we're going to go back to. I think what we're going to do, we're just going to quickly go through a load of images, and then we're going to get to the conclusion that I wanted to do last week. So we remember this, right? And yes, we discussed this, and we were thinking, well, what is going on here? How much of this is the genuine article? And we had that discussion last week. So I think Heinberg in Germany, what I need to do, I need to wrap this up. I need to make it. I need to say why we've done the site and what is the interpretation and significance. And that's what I'm going to focus on. We looked at the burials last week. We had a little look at that. So we just did all this last week. And remember, there are sites like this in France, actually, around the same time. So I'm glad. I really appreciate everybody's contributions, and I'm glad David challenged me last week. And I thought, right, let's just try and see if I can find something that is answering David's challenge, and I did find it. So I appreciated that challenge, David. So we got there's a German guy, right, who's in my class on a Wednesday. He doesn't look German or sound German, but one of his relatives was a certain officer in the Second World War, and he speaks German. So he basically it's not Heinberg. It's said in a different way. So what we're going to do, where you've got that site VIX, right? That's the other site we're going to mention tonight in France. And then Heinberg. That's right, Heinberg. That's it. I've done it. So again, we talked about burials. You got the four-wheeled thing here, right? We mentioned this, the burial here. We discussed this, Heinberg, and the one thing about Heinberg, there is no doubt that Heinberg and its associated monuments are one of the most important centers of the Iron Age the Celtic Iron Age in Europe as we refer to the way the Greeks would use the term. And it is also clear that the site should be seen in a context with other prominent centres of its time. And one of you mentioned the word burial and Cartimandua, the find in North Yorkshire a few moments ago. That was Margaret, and it was just like, maybe what we should be doing is seeing this period as a very rich period, not a poor period. So when you see it as a very rich period, you're going to get more people who are buried with rich things, and they're not kings and queens, Margaret. Yeah. And I think maybe, Margaret, you should, it's that idea that just because people are buried with gold doesn't mean to say that they're important, right? Think of Incan civilization. I use that benchmark, and you got an iron talk, and got really excited last week and whatever. And certain things mean certain things in different cultures, and we find a lot of gold being buried in the Iron Age in Britain. Does that mean that gold is dispensable? Yes, it does. But you don't find. I'm going to make a bold statement here. It's probably wrong. There are more golden talks being found from the Iron Age in Britain than there are iron swords. Right? Work that out as you will. Yeah. And Heienberg, again, we mentioned this last week. This is the Heienberg site up on a little bit of a plateau, and the landscape then developed in this sort of huge oppidum. Oppidum, remember that word oppidum, which is a word which we're going to use a lot. Oppidum, Caliva atrabatum is an oppidum. Stanwick is an oppidum. Duropolis in Dorset is an oppidum. This site, Heienberg, is also an oppidum type landscape. Oppidum means like a town in the Iron Age. We basically mentioned maybe the population here was up to 10,000 people, which I'm reminded, Andy, that's twice the size of Arnside, isn't it? So there we go. And again, these terms that we mentioned last week, just a little bit of recap: Latar, and Hallstatt, and these are terms from the Central European plain, which sort of paints the sort of Hallstatt period of the Iron Age, where there's lots of luxury, and Latin is about art style and all the rest of it. These terms that we don't really use much in archaeology these days, particularly in a British context. But again, thinking about this burial context with these things, and going through these a little bit quick, but because we did them last week, but we'll keep this up on the screen so you can just get a bit more of a focus. We're going to Heienberg again. North of Switzerland, we know it's in southern Germany, as we showed on the plan earlier on. The Heienberg settlement reflects important socio-political developments. And when we use the word socio-political developments, we're not just talking about Germanic Iron Age. We're not talking about us developing and the people being in independent raison d'etre of determining our direction in society. But what we're also saying, we're talking about trade. There's a lot of trade going on. There's a lot of you scratch my back and I scratch yours. Let's do various different things. So it appears to be the case that 700 years BC, in some regions, wealth and population became concentrated in relatively small areas, a development that further accelerates around 600 years BC, particularly in Heienberg, particularly near Paris, particularly at places like Danebury, particularly places that seem to develop like Caliva atrabatum, which is near Silchester, and Europolis, which is going to develop into towns and cities a little bit later. And the terminology used in the word towns and cities is a bit blasé. We use the word flippantly, when we flippingly sounds better. Flippantly, we see this as we use the term a lot in Roman Britain, cities, towns, but we never use it in regards to Iron Age Britain, and we should. A city is a big place. A town is a smaller place. I do believe that Arnside, some people refer to it as a town, but other people refer to it as a village. But it's not really meaningful, and it is meaningful, but we've got to see this as a development of a society that is really aspiring. When you aspire, you get people together. And something that Kathleen Kenyon said with her excavations at Jericho in the 1950s was, when you get people together what do you get? You get disease, right? And this is another thing. Incoming developing societies, you get disease. Incoming developing societies, you get conflict, right? So what we've got, there's a point to be made there. This is that a reconstruction of that young girl from that burial. Before in an Iron Age context, in Britain, for example, you get a dispersed landscape with little sort of hamlets and villages here and farmsteads and bank and ditched enclosures, hill forts. You get these, and there's not really much warfare. But when you get people on living on each other's backs, as it were, you're going to get conflict. You're going to get, that's mine, that's yours. You get the good sense of property and so on. So again, we mentioned this last week, and I got really excited amongst one burial there near Heienberg, known as the Homichel burial. And that's got an iron talk. Remember, neck ring, iron talk. And yes, we've got a sword there. And this is the thing, whether this is a male or a female burial, the sword doesn't differentiate whether it's a male or female. It says probable male. So there we go. So a growing differentiation in terms of wealth that are visible amongst settlements, sites, but especially among burials, indicates the development of social hierarchy. So we've got a sense of hierarchies. Now, that's a really interesting word being used. This is at Heienberg. Now, you can only have hierarchies developing, and I think this answers another question that we were mentioning before. Somebody mentioned about, I think it was Jeannie Beanie, a mention about hierarchies. Was it a hierarchical society? You can only have hierarchical societies where you've got a king, a queen at the top, or a lord, or whatever, a lady at the top. Particularly ladies, isn't there? Because this is a matriarchal society in Britain, for example, and Scandinavia. I'll be very careful with my words there. But whoever's at the top, whether they're male, female, hermaphrodite, or whoever's at the top has to be based on the fact that there are people supporting you. You cannot have a hierarchical society with just two people in a shed and a pig, right? You need to have hundreds of people have a hierarchical society. Because have hierarchy, you've got to support the person at the top of the triangle, right? So that person at the top of the triangle, you give them a bit of your grain. I give them a bit of my grain, right? That person at the top of society then decides what goes on in that society, right? But if you've only got a small number of people, you've got no hierarchy. So hierarchies developing in the later Iron Age because people are living within towns, big towns and sort of city landscapes, urbanized landscapes. That's the word, urbanized landscapes. So this is illustrated by the discovery. So what we've got is lots of sense that hierarchies are not just looking at. So if we go, I think this illustrates this girl. I think hierarchies are not just illustrative of a male or a female that's of a certain age. Hierarchy can be seen in children whose parents are important, right? I mean, it's clear that a young child could not have earned or gained such wealth. Hence, the individual must have been born rich. That's a good point. That's because of hierarchy. But what type of hierarchical society are we talking about? And how, if you've got so much wealth, I think there's a point I was trying to make earlier on. There are two societies at that point of stinking wealth. The Inca civilization, where people just left gold lying around, right? Pizarro, when he went to Cusco, there was gold just lying in the street. It was just like they picking up, and the conquistadors after 1531, when they got to the Incan civilization in the south, this Pizarro, they were filling their pockets up, and the Incans were laughing at them. Why are you filling your pockets up with gold? It's rubbish, right? So differentiating what hierarchy is by wealth is sometimes dangerous. And then when you look at Minoan civilization and you go back to the Minoan civilization beyond 1,700 years BC, before the events of Thera, which we've seen playing out sort of recently, in a way that the Santorini might be, Thera might be, the whole thing might be going up in flames. But but before the Minoan civilization ended, what we do have is we've got a society that there's a lot of gold. Even the poor people in Minoan society have gold. And so again, thinking about gold as items as being a benchmark to who somebody is sometimes fraught, right? In Greek society, your richness is done on your achievements for society, not wealth. For example, if you're going to be if you're going to be one of their great writers like Herodotus, or you might even be thinking about Plato, or you might be thinking about anyone in society in Greece is done by your achievements rather than your wealth in many ways, and that's how you're remembered. Olympian, for example. So again, thinking about all of this and moving on with these images to try and obviously looking at the graves again, more of this, and we'll just leave this here for a moment. So thinking about this society that's developing a wall around it in Heienberg, and you're thinking about a sense of centralization, to have hierarchy, to have burials, to have wealth, to have trade, to have identity, to have who you are, to have that you're born into wealth. There is an element of political centralization. People, there's only one way you can have a site of Heienberg with a population of 10,000 people. It's centralized. People, you're bringing your stuff to Heienberg. It's a centralized locality. You're controlling, you're controlling quite a number of square kilometers of land, right? And this is what we're seeing. So this is a model of who these people are, um, and obviously you're not going to be able to produce enough food locally to support 10,000 people. So can you imagine if the population of Arnside today, which is not 10,000, which is under 5,000. Correct me if I'm wrong. Would Arnside in this modern day and age be able to support itself by local agriculture? I would say no. Um, and that's in a modern day and age. It's got to bring stuff in. We've got the structure to have booths, and we've got the structure to have Morrison's, right? But they didn't have that back then. So this is a huge supply chain bringing goods and objects to a locality. There's Heienberg there again. So the ongoing social and professional specialization had led to the development of specialized workshops. So you're bringing goods into process, and then those goods, you've got the ores, you've got the creating metallurgical and objects. You've got iron, you've got your bronze, you've got to be able to create things. You're bringing goods in, and then you're giving out with trade for grain, for sheep, for goats, and all the rest of it. So Heienberg is one of those areas where you're able to get artisan quarters. You're able to develop this locality to mean more to the large scale of populace of the landscape that Heienberg supports. So going away from my notes here, so we've got a few little things, and then we mentioned the comparisons with these, but we've got a lot to go yet. So if we read out what it says on the screen, and we'll just leave this here for a few minutes for you guys to digest while I go on to doing some more talking. So the Iron Age in temperate Europe is characterized, as we know, by the emergence of these hill forts, banks, and ditch enclosures that inevitably fall out of use in a British context by the time you get to the invasion of Claudius by AD 43. While such sites can be highly variable, they also share many characteristics implying cultural linkages across a wide geographical area. Is that the case with our 5,000 hill forts in Britain, or is that talking about Europe? Yet the interpretation of hill forts has increasingly seen significant divergence in theoretical approaches in different European countries. In particular, INA studies in Britain have progressively distance themselves from those pursued in continental Europe. That's a good point, because this is why maybe I shouldn't make so much of saying, we're not a Celtic people in Britain, right? We're producing our own direction. We're different, right? But what we do have with Danebury, for example, it says one of the best known hill forts in Europe, Danebury. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry about it. But we talked about Heienberg. We're going to look at Danebury tonight. So what we've got various sequences as these hill forts develop into communities. Usually, what you do get with hill forts, for example, like Hod Hill and Maiden Castle and Dorset, they're not these big population centres. Whereas Danebury, maybe Cadbury in was it Somerset Way, and the likes of. Then you go on to Duropolis in Dorset, and you got Cleaver Atrapatum, and so on. So what you've got really is understanding this world, this landscape, and then you sort of go to show that maybe this site here at Danebury isn't too different. For example, as compared to there's our site here. This is Heienberg. So they're saying that Danebury is developing here into what Heienberg is on the continent. We look at a little bit of that evidence, but what Heienberg isn't and what Danebury isn't is, for example, Maiden Castle, which is a big sprawling site, which is we're now starting to think that that many archaeologists are now starting to think that even before Vespasian marches his armies to Dorchester, which is basically a mile away from, is it 2 miles away from Maiden Castle, this site was already well abandoned. So when Sir Mortimer Wheeler is talking about a siege here by Vespasian's army, this is the future Emperor Vespasian in AD 79. When we think about this site, by the time Vespasian gets here, the site's abandoned, so there could be no siege. This is not going on. So again, Heienberg, this sort of this sprawl of site, and Heienberg, it could be argued that this is a powerful, dominated world that is simplified by saying, look, you've got somebody living in the top bit there and, controlling the landscape with a population of 10,000 people. But the complex realities of having somebody controlling this landscape are more than we can actually do in a presentation like this tonight. And again, so what we've got, this Heienberg site, these sites coming into existence. Strikingly, some are being abandoned, and being sites that like this are eventually being abandoned is something probably on akin to the fact that they got too big for their own devices in a way. They got far too big. There's Heienberg again. There's one of the mounds, and this again, we're just sort of thinking, and this is something that is a question that we can't really answer. When we find sites like the vitrified forts in Scotland, the 100 or so vitrified forts in Scotland, were they deliberately burnt down? Do they show signs of this and that? Lots of these questions. Each of these banked and ditched enclosures, these tens of thousands of hill forts across Europe. There are tens of thousands. If there's 5,000 in Britain, Europe's a bit bigger than that. There's tens of thousands of these hill forts. At one stage, they were just abandoned, all of them, right? With so much effort into them, big banks and ditches, they were abandoned. So lots of these parallels and similarities. This shared story. So why would you abandon a site like this? The traditional view that the two they've got destruction layers at this site. So was this violent destruction? And then they're saying that maybe these sites weren't violently destroyed. So when we talk about that, we go back to what exactly happened at Must Farm near Peterborough. Must Farm, we're saying, is a site that we're not really sure what happened to it, but it was burnt down. Is that because of violence? There's no sign of any violence. So it may have been that at one stage they said, right, we don't want to live there anymore. This site has become too big. All us 10,000 people need to go back out into the landscape. We can't support it anymore. Let's abandon the site. We see that with Maiden Castle, but we don't see that with Kilívar at Barton. Kilívar at Barton is going places by the time the Romans get to Britain in AD 43. Geropolis and Dorset, that's going places before the Romans. So what is different? What is going on? Why the Hillfort's abandoned? These open settlements within the landscape continue, right? So, again, thinking about is this, and the other thing as well is this is the odd thing. If you're going to abandon a site like this because of warfare and then live in the landscape in farmsteads that are not protected, the two things go against each other. Maybe because lots of these buildings were made of timber. There was a fire one day and the whole thing went up in flames. This is one thing that they're saying in the 400 years BC. So arguing fire's accidental or deliberate is a really interesting thing. Now, just a few things before we actually we'll go to 10 past and we will then have our break. So we'll do a whole hour. Now, there's a few things. What we're going to do, let's change to some slides. Let's change to this slide. This is Old Sarum and climate across Western Europe, Britain, Hamburg, France, Scandinavia. It's been proposed that climate was a big part of the development of these big sites across Europe and then going into Britain by the 400s, the 600s in Britain, the Iron Age in Britain. And then when we think about this, that it's a warm period. It's warm in Europe when these sites are being built across Europe. This is a warm landscape. And so it may be that people were able to get together and be a bit more pally and build this type of society. A milder climate, a warmer climate, less floods would have permitted more successful agriculture, more excess, more food, more sheep. I'll give you an example. We've got a single goat now, and our goat that we come and see we come and see her every day, and we look after our sheep here. She's fine now. She's running around. She's happy. But in the winter months, she was struggling, and we thought that she's got a problem. But she's happy now. When it's damp, sheep struggle. When it's damp, cows struggle. When it's damp, pigs struggle. Right? When it's wet. But if it's a lot more milder for most of the year, you get more sheep. You get more chickens' eggs being laid. Chickens don't like the damp, but chickens are going to lay more eggs. Ducks are going to lay more eggs if it's milder. There's more excess. There's more food for people to eat. More people have allowed for larger populations. These types of large sites, and thus for the development of more complex political, social, and artisanal specializations, pottery, basket weaving, metal working, and so on. However, what we do see is that sometime leading up to the birth of Christ, population changes into different areas. It might be to do with climate. The end of the mild period, sometime in the 300 years BC. It gets a little bit more wetter, right? And maybe people think, right, sod this for a game of soldiers. We don't want to live in a site like this. We don't want to live in a site like this. We want to live at places like Kilívar at Barton. So it leads to the demise of these sites, the collapse of these sites, the collapse of society. Right? People migrate. Me and Andy were talking about earlier on migration of the Aztec civilization and the remaining Maya up north, south, and all the rest of it. And Andy, one of the things I failed to say earlier on, that there was a change in temperature in Central America, which was going to cause the collapse of the Aztec civilization, with or without the conquistadors, with Cortes in 1521. And what we're seeing as well, we're not just talking about Heimberg, we're not talking about this wonderful site of Heimberg, but we are talking about places like Danebury, places like our Old Sarum, places like Maiden Castle, and all these other wonderful sites across Britain. And in the north, I think, guys, you need to look out for this hoard which we've just explained earlier on. I would love to know what objects that are found in North Yorkshire actually come from abroad, because some of them do. We are able to produce that stuff. Our stuff is going to Europe. Their stuff is coming to us to trade objects and all the rest of it. Mining, all that resources that we've got, we're bringing stuff in. And that's an interesting point. We've got all the kit, right, in Britain. We've got all the kit to do wonderful things, and now we're proving it. They've got all the kit in Europe, right? They've got all the kit in the Middle East. They've got all the kit in Egypt, in Italy and stuff. People are trading. They're moving stuff around. There's this great trade. Everybody can do these things, right? But they're trading it around. So you've got blue glass here. We've got our pale glass somewhere else. You all this stuff being traded around. Our pottery has ended up in Europe, by the way, as well. So the importance of Heimberg to try and get a context and a bridge to understanding our society, right, like that of contemporary centres, is closely connected with its location in relation to several important trade routes. You've got the Danube towards the east, you've got the Rhine towards the west in regards to Hamburg. And what we need to do, before I change over my device, which will mean that we'll be having a break, you can see that the trade routes there. You've got the word Hallstatt there, which again is South Hamburg. That sort of cultural links to this sort of burial culture, this sort of other stylistic world, and then you've got the more elaborate Celtic culture of Latin. And basically, the reason why we've got these words banding about Hallstatt is the first place that this sort of cultural earlier Iron Age sort of art form, more sort of less twirly than the Latin. So when we get the Latin stuff, this is the more elaborate Iron Age Celtic stuff, the Celtic art form. Latin is more Celtic art form. That's what, again, the word is a Celtic form of art. So what we've got trade with the north, we've got trade with the south, the east, and the west, all this stuff going on. We've also got this trade going on with the site of Vix, okay, Vix, which is just obviously central France. There it is. And what we've got trade with Greek colonies of Massalia. There you go on the plan. We've got trade with the Etruscan world in Italy. We've got trade with the Balkans, the Black Sea, Egypt. All this stuff is being found. We've got trade indicated with metals and amber being found in burials, the perishables of leather and fur from the north. And it's very likely, right, that leather and fur came from Britain to Heimberg. Yeah, because we were massive fur and leather exporters. One of the key reasons the Romans talked about the fur of Britain. It was like our furs in Britain were actually traded with Rome, even before Rome came to Britain. That's a mark of we're trading fur, not our gold and stuff. We're trading our fur. So the Mediterraneans, the Etruscans, you've got the world moving. You've got these mud brick fortified cities. They're building with ashlar masonry in Heimberg as well. And again, one last thing to be said before we go on to our break. The Greek historian, I mentioned this last week, but I was a bit vague. So the Greek historian Herodotus, in his book, his second book, made a brief passing reference to a Celtic city called the Greek Pyrenae, which is a little bit away from the Pyrenees, but Pyrenae, P-Y-R-E-N-E. For the Ister flows, that's the Danube, which is there by Heimberg, that's that river there. The Ister flows from the land of the Celts and the city of Pyrenae through the very middle of Europe. Well, they've got to be referring to Heimberg, since the Heimberg is roughly in the right location and was a major regional centre just before that time. It is possible that Herodotus from the 400s, about 450, is referring to this place as its name as Pyrenees. This is our modern day name, Heimberg, and Herodotus is giving a name of a place in history, citing somewhere very important. Or going back to David's point next week, if Herodotus is not referring to Heimberg, then there's an unfound site with all this wealth and influence yet to be found. We're just what we do in archaeology, we find something like as Margaret did earlier on. Margaret mentioned earlier on, she said, "Oh, what about this treasure being found in North Yorkshire? What about this treasure in North Yorkshire actually being the burial of Cartimandua?" But Margaret, there were other equal leaders whose names have been lost in history that could equally that hoard have been attributed to. So always remember that.
It could have been somebody like a Florence Nightingale. It didn't necessarily have to be a leader. It could have been somebody who was very well thought of in the community. I mean, we remember you could list a whole load of people, philosophers, just people that have done marvelous things. Douglas Bader, Marie Curie. I've written loads of names here of people that have done great things, not necessarily leaders.
And they're not necessarily wealthy in gold and silver.
Well thought of, that have done wonderful things for the community.
So that is a point you've just made. That is a point, which is a very important point. How people interpret the world around them is equally as important as interpreting the world around them in a financial sense, right? The value of people. We've spoken about the value of people in this prehistoric world for a long time. The metallurgists were valuable people, right? The pottery makers were valuable people, right? The candlestick makers were valuable people. All these people were, tallow, yes, there was. So the point is, people were valuable, and to be buried with value, in a way, is the opposite of the way you were in life. And I don't know. Okay, here's a metaphor. I don't know if you've seen all of us have seen the film Dr. Zhivago, and obviously Dr. Zhivago's a poet. He's everyone goes to his funeral at the end of the film, right? But he didn't have wealth, but his books were the word, and that was value. So I'm glad we're thinking that way. That I love it, and that itself is the way we've got to think in history and archaeology, not just in materialistic male and female terms. We've got to think about what people valued, and there's not just gold and silver. They valued people's ability. I'm loving it. I like the way you've gone there. We're gonna have a break, but before we have our break, it's I want to know if anyone's got anything to say. David.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, David number 2.
Well, he's gone for a minute.
All right then, Emma number 1.
No.
Right. Margaret done her bit, I think, but Margaret, you could
say one more thing.
Yeah. Actually, you said too much, but you could say one more thing. Go for it.
Do you think these hill forts, these places might have been abandoned because of disease?
And why not?
Yeah.
Because that is something we haven't mentioned much of. But disease and how to deal with disease is going to be a new concept to them, right? So everybody's suddenly getting these terrible diseases. This never happened before, right? Well, I can't mention it because I will be censored for mentioning a certain thing. In 2020, something happened to society, right? And we weren't able to deal with it. And that's in the modern day and age. We had no idea how to deal with what happened in 2020, right? So how did these people have any clue how to deal with diseases? They didn't, right? That's a really good point. I appreciate that, Margaret. Yes, you're right. They would not have been able to deal with it at all. And it's the same as what happened to Native American populations in North America. Diseases went through their villages like a dose of salt. Everyone died. They had no idea how to deal with it. So how do you expect these people? They
In
didn't.
present day, animals get foot and mouth disease. Did they
Oh,
animals
God.
get things like that back then? Is that a fairly
Um,
new thing?
well, it's like Ash dieback. It's like Dutch elm disease. It happens in nature. It happens in humanity, right? Whenever you got loads of animals together, they're gonna die eventually from diseases. It's gonna happen. Yeah. Right, Dreeny Beanie,
No, nothing to say.
Roger Bodger.
Something I've got a query on these Hillforts still. I think I'll always have one.
Go for it.
The problem is, it struck me there's something that's not working here to have a hill fort where people, it wasn't a fort, but people were living out of the way because they're up high where there's no real water source. They're limited for farming and stuff, which may make it safe for certain parts of the year or something. But to me, the hill forts seem more like a protected farming area to stop animals attacking their cattle. The food source was precious, and that the crops as well, precious things which you could not lose people, but not their food sources and stuff, because they need to be near rivers and places for all the use of water, which was quite widely used and
All
needed.
the processes that they needed, tanning.
So something doesn't work if they're high up somewhere, apart from some specialized farm use, maybe protection of times, to be able to make a sense of it all. Because even though they got ditches, but animals will not cross ditches easily, so they can protect. It's not just their own animals, the wild animals attacking, as well as not battling, as well as skirmishes, people attacking, raiding type things. So there's something we've missed somewhere that I don't know if anybody's proposed it. You'll have buildings on the site, yes.
Not many, exactly. But
a lot of the buildings shown are just an idea. It's just not true. You'll have buildings there which you need in a farming environment to look after the stocks, provide feeds, take in the arable land produce, if there's arable land farming there. And you think, well, is that more like it? So buildings are not permanent villages where they just live and do their thing, but really part of the village in a safe farming area which protects all their food and stuff. Yet they've got access to water, which is paramount to any living group for not just living and normal functions, but for industry they've got for dealing with skins and all sorts of things, and that's the work maybe. So that's something that's bugging me, that something doesn't really add up.
Right. Okay. So Danebury, and the likes of our site that we're going to do in France after the break, the likes of Heimberg, they're different types of categories, right? These are sites that did become places of locality rather than as farming. That there's a big difference now. But your point is, in the majority of all the tens of thousands of hill forts across Europe, have a different raison d'etre, and all of that raison d'etre for the ownership of those hill forts over a different time is changing and altering. And yes, there are questions that we need to answer. Maybe we're doing more hill forts next week, Roger, and maybe we can answer some more of those questions.
Yes.
Anyway, thanks for that, Roger. Thanks. Right, we're going to have a break soon. So anything from you, Andy?
Yeah, just along those lines, actually. I was just thinking it keeps coming up in various conversations about sites we've been looking at over the last few months that a lot of these hill forts were abandoned before the Roman invasion, which would be a good argument against the fact that they were fortified and used for defensive purposes, because we're obviously trading 200 years before the invasion with the Romans and Roman Europe. So everybody would have known the danger of the Roman Empire. So if it was a defensive threat, they would have kept the hill fort, because the hill fort clearly could be used as a defensive thing, but they left them all before that. So
the answer is they left some of, well, okay, the big ones that they left. The point is that Just quickly, right? You're talking about Elysee Vercingetorix. You're talking about Catra Vercingetorix. Beef about 51 by about 51 BC. This is 100. Well, mathematically, this is over 100 years before the Romans invade Britain. And the British were supplying people and arms and supplies to those in northern France, right? Yeah. They were completely aware of the Roman world. But Andy's point is this, and I think that needs to be framed and left there. If these people are going to be threatened and attacked by Rome, why are they abandoning the places that they can defend? And they are. It doesn't make sense. Roger's point, it doesn't make sense. So in other words, we go back to Roger's point. These are massive areas for keeping grain, keeping animals safe and all the rest of it, right? So it's more Roger's point as well, and I think this is picked up nicely. Roger's point is that grain and supplies are more important than human life, right? Because without the grain and supply animals, you're all going to die anyway. So keeping these places as big areas to keep your things safe, but then again, Andy, they're still abandoned.
Well, so lots of expansion of the needs.
Expansion beyond the expansion of the needs, knowing that Rome is going to invade one day, but you can't resist Rome. And this is a key point. This is why many tribal groups in Britain were already alliancing with Rome before Rome invaded.
That was a special case, I think, which threw everything out of kilter, to my way of thinking.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Okay. Judith, thanks, Rod. Judith, anything you want to say?
No, nothing. Thank you. Very interesting again.
And who else have we got? We got Anne.
Yes. You mentioned migration, and things like disease or more people or various things you mentioned. All of these things tended to be something you'd run away from. But at one point, you also said when the climate was warm, people were happy to stay there. And what I'm thinking was, so many of these things, and when people have gone, it has been for negative reasons. They're frightened of something or they're losing something. Was there ever any time a pull? We say there's a push and a pull for migration. Was there any time when people would go somewhere because they thought it was better, right? To abandon, to go for something better?
Right, there's 2 points there. Disease in warm weather, diseases are more prevalent, right? But that's really a red herring. So the other point as well is all I can say is that if we look at the one example I've got with Southern American civilization, where communities, when they've got everything at their doorstep, they basically say, right, we're at the height of our civilization, we're going to go elsewhere and we're going to start again. That's the best way of doing things, because eventually, when you're at the height of civilization is going to collapse. You look at Akhenaten and Akhetaten, right? Yeah. Basically, Akhenaten thought we can create something new in a locality. We can have all the wealth. Things worked for a couple of years. Then things collapsed, right? People feel that they can just keep going and keep going. They can just keep consuming civilization. And like modern civilization, it's not looking good. It's not about, there's certain things around with modern civilization. We keep consuming more human population. Things are escalating out of control, which are some of the debates that we're talking about today. But the positivities about moving away from plenty and moving to new areas and creating new things, because you're aware civilization's going to go downhill if you keep consuming. And it might be that in the case of the Hillforts, they were on a good thing and they thought, right, this isn't going to last forever. We're just going to move. But that's a lot to say about the tens of thousands of Hillforts across Europe, and it's a lot. We're happy with our Hillfort. We don't need to move, right? It's okay to keep our grain. We're happy living here, right? But strangely enough, it's almost as if there's an overall abandon. And there's one other characteristic. We need to have a break. There's one characteristic at the end of Roman Britain, right? Because Roman Britain ended with the end of the Roman world in the West by 473 AD, right? 476. Now, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. Rome itself had collapsed. Right, the Eastern Roman Empire continued, but anything that was Rome after that point, after 476, right, most of the Roman villas across the Roman world in the West were abandoned. They were just abandoned. Even the ones in plenty and there was no threat, they just abandoned the Roman villas, right, all over the shop. The tens of thousands, like the Iron Age Hillforts, the tens of thousands of Roman villas were just abandoned. Usually, archaeologists explain, oh, they were burnt down, but some were just abandoned. I mentioned the one the other week that we get one Roman villa that wasn't burned down. We get evidence of owl pellets being left on the floor on the mosaic. Right, the site was just abandoned. Nobody lived there anymore. Right, they weren't killed, they weren't raped and pillaged. The house wasn't burned down. Right, we need to be rethinking about history. The civilization gets to a point. When we talk about the Roman cities in Britain, like Cirencester, we talk even like Londinium, Verulamium, all these places, right? We hear about. Well, we think this is inferred that Anglo-Saxon peoples moving into Britain after the 500s, they see whole Roman cities abandoned in Britain. And it's sort of, but they were abandoned because there's disease. Maybe they were abandoned because people didn't want to live in them anymore. That's it. There's no thing about disease or none of these buildings have been set alight.
No, I mean we talk these days about the pull of I mean not the same thing as what would have been there, but what I just wondered whether there was a pull to go somewhere else. Like possibly in those days,
like the Aztec people moving north. That's it. We've said it.
Yeah.
It's like the Pueblo people, Carl. Pueblo people in southern states had left their places, they thought, because of drought and changing climate. If you remember,
Yes.
we heard of that once. You know what I mean? They had to move. It's happened elsewhere, no doubt. Change of climate, something to do with the water supply, so something. They have to shift to live.
And modern parallels, economic migration. Right, I've got to have a break now. I've got to transfer over my device. We're going to have a 15-minute break. It's 8:29. Let's be back by just before 9:15. I'll see you then.
Righty ho. Well,
thank you. I didn't want to interrupt, but do you think it was all down to? Oh, it's gone.
Oh, go on, talk. Go on.
I think maybe it was down to population explosions on a small scale, where the groups, probably tribes, built forts to keep out other tribes originally. Only my thoughts, nothing proven. But then they fortify their bit of land and their resources. And it seems to me it's very much like Russia against Ukraine in the modern day. They want the resources. And Trump's got it right. He wants the valuable land and resources that are there, and he's backing that. And I think this is what happened all the way through societies forever, really. You can see the same pattern in all of these different societies. And it would take 1,000,000 years to unravel time way back. But it's very interesting. And I'm going to join you again because I love hearing you.
Well, we're having a break now, so we haven't finished.
Yeah, all right. Well, I'll come back to you. I'm going to have something to eat and a cigarette.
Yeah, I'm going to have something to eat as
I
well.
need a cigarette.
Yeah, nobody smokes in these classes, but you can. Anyway, so we'll be back soon. Anyway, thanks for that contribution. Always say something. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers, Carl. See you in a bit.
See you in a bit.
Every 2 hours now, I hear the smoke.
I am a wee.
I'm not going to spot in the pot. Yeah, I know. Becky got me this. So, for Christmas. Have you?
See, Paddy.
Right, oh, right.
The only reason I'm not using it, when I get in bed, I'll put it on this way. You can't pick it. Two hands and get it across.
I'm going to have one of my sleep ones.
Another one of my experimental things. I bought these. Try out.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, they're nice ones. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know good ones. Yeah, he's very good. He's very interesting, isn't he? Yeah, I'm very, yeah. Well, but another half an hour, I think.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, amazing, amazing brain. Yeah. Just leave that there for a minute. I'll go for a wee and I'll be back down.
I'm thinking if I heard that the Romans were going to invade, back then, I would have fled for the hills, wouldn't you?
Well, yes. As I say, this is why I was surprised, because I'm trying to think of, why people. If you go back further, the hunter gatherers. I was saying a reason that usually it's bad things people are trying to, rather than move towards something that seems favourable. I mean, it could be that, if you think when the hunter gatherers would live somewhere and probably not quite exhaust, but use quite a lot of resources in a small area and then move on to another one they haven't touched. So it's, a reason to move to somewhere better. But so many of these reasons for move, and we still have them today, don't they? Most of them are negative. Move.
But can you imagine anything more terrifying than a Roman army with elephants?
No. Well, or even disease. I mean, disease is something that's, going across the whole country. There's all sorts of frightening things that can happen.
Yeah.
But it's, as I say, it's thinking of the pull reason for moving, and must be some. I've been trying to think of them. A good reason to go rather than a fear.
You'd think a Hillfort would be the best place to be if there was an invading army.
That's right, you would. Yeah. Anyway.
What's happened to Janice? Didn't she want to join tonight?
She wasn't well, and she felt terrible for not coming because she'd put it, been doing some of for 3 weeks before, and it got here last week. But so she said she feels really terrible not being. I said, don't feel like that. You're all. But anyway, hopefully she'll be here next week.
Yeah.
She told me after, because we had a chat afterwards, and she said she really enjoyed it. So
good.
She was glad she'd come along.
Yeah.
So I don't think she's avoiding us.
One new message read. Okay. Does only get such reports? Next stage delivery is FFGP.
What's the weather like in our side? Has it been sunny today?
Yes, it's been absolutely glorious today.
Yeah.
Really gorgeous all day. I rang my daughter and she's down in near Grantham, and she was horrible and all dull, and yet it's been absolutely beautiful here today.
Well, we're not far from Grantham.
That's right.
Just a little bit further south.
Yeah.
But it's been very humid today.
Yeah.
I went for a walk this morning and I was too hot.
Mm. Well, I was sort of sitting out, having my coffee outside, and kept the door open to keep the place cool. It was a really lovely day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been dry for ages, isn't it?
Yeah.
Touch wood. Do you know where my daughter lives? She lives in Mallorca. And she says they've got an infestation of peacocks where they live.
Infestation of peacocks? I've never heard of that.
I thought she was going to say ants, but she sent me photographs of loads and loads of peacocks, and they're getting into people's houses, jumping onto balconies.
Yeah, looking for food, I suppose.
I don't know. I wonder where on earth they've come from.
Yes, I've never heard of them. Usually see the peacocks in, no more than about half a dozen at the most I've ever seen together.
No, she
On a-
sent photographs and they're everywhere. They have to shut the doors to stop them coming in.
Where have they all come from? One
I
wonders.
don't know.
They must have been very good at looking after their eggs or something.
They must have escaped from somewhere, but she said they've been a real nuisance for the past few weeks.
Mm.
Yeah, they've had
The
quite a
row
lot
would
of
be awful.
rain.
I mean, look how they shriek. I
Yeah.
don't.
I
I remember
wondered, what do they call female peacocks? Are they just called a
pea
pea?
hens, I believe they're
Oh,
called.
a peahen.
Pea
Yes,
hens.
that's right. Of
Yeah.
course,
They're peahens. Yeah,
peahen.
they used to have them here in Inglemere.
Really?
Yeah, when it was a hotel, they had a couple of peacocks.
Yeah.
They don't have to make a noise.
They do.
I went to a play at Dudley. It was set in Dudley Castle, which has got a zoo round it. And in the middle of the play, these screeches would go off, and it was the peacocks that were making such a row you couldn't hear the play. Some bits of the time, I'm not saying they do it all the time, but it was a great disturbance to the watching the play.
Mm.
Still, it was different, wasn't it?
Oh,
You've
yeah.
got peacocks going off instead of roads or cars or something. Horns. Yes, but yes. But I've never heard of that. That there's been
An
really
infestation.
lot of them.
No, but they do use them for security because
Yes,
of the noise they make.
yes, they can
Yeah.
make a real row on that.
She's
And like
near a
geese,
golf
they use
course.
geese as well, don't they, for
Yeah.
security? Because the round they make.
I've never heard of peacocks being used for security.
No, I haven't heard of that. I mean, I've heard of geese, but I can
Yeah.
see the same. I can see the
In,
principles
in
the
India,
same.
they use them quite a lot around palaces and temples for that reason.
Mm.
Yeah, Dad, put the oven on now. Or is it okay? Yeah. Brilliant.
I never know what to do with these. I've got a file for fines.
All right. Come on here. Yeah. Did you get the right.
Funny names you've got here. Drainer's iPhone and Emma's iPad. That's peculiar names.
Well, we're just going to rename everybody from Lord of the Rings.
What's with the Golden Gate? Is that the Golden Gate Bridge behind you?
Oh, I just can't change the blooming image on it.
Right.
Aspirations
I'm
of
here.
Hollywood. Oh, all right, Roger, we've been waiting for you. Hang on a minute. I did say,
No, I was here before you.
Roger, I
On
did say
time.
8:44
Ready to get at it.
and it's 8:46. I'm sorry, no excuse. Right, you've ruined my life and everyone else's. Right, let's get on with it. Right, okay. So share. If you can hear a weird noise in the background, it's the cat.
The what? The bat.
The cat.
No, the cat. Oh, we got a cat.
The cat.
Like a bat. We got a cat that looks like a bat.
Tweet, tweet.
Right, so tweet. Right, so okay, so by the way, right, guess what I found in the back of my car? Right, I've got a new car, right, and I've got this thing in the back that says "Help, call police."
I can't afford a dinghy.
Which is a bit odd.
Those big glasses.
Right, Roger, that just wasn't funny, right? So this site here, these images, are of a site in France, which we do believe is very similar to our site of Heimberg, right? Which has buildings and burials which are very, very similar to Heimberg. And obviously gold objects, funerary wheels, objects from the Mediterranean. I'm just running through these images quickly to show you what we're going to do, and then we're going to go to Danebury, right? So let's just go back. I'm using a different device at this minute, so let's just look at this site. So we know where it is in the centre of France, and this is all David was right in what he said. Why have we just got one site like this? And we haven't. We got more. So it was good to get me out. So this is a place called Mont-le-Sceau, a site of a great Celtic fortification near Châtillon-sur-Saône in the Côte d'Or department of France. Typically referred to Hillfort, basically on Mount Le seems to have been the center of a widespread political authority and extensive trade relationship, especially during 500 years BC. So there's this explosion of connection with wider world centers 500 years before the birth of Christ. Now, the exact description, if you want to go to Britannia Online, which is a nice, useful source occasionally, and if I can get my notes here, is it going to come up, or I've got something blocking this a minute? 1 second. So yeah, this site itself is associated with a number of burials. It's a very, very unusual looking site. It's part of a much wider landscape, like our Heimberg, and the burials and the artifacts here are associated again with Heimberg and an extensive trade route that goes all the way through to Spain, Black Sea, Turkey, Anatolia, and it's just so intriguing that we've got so much being focused into these amazing sites. And when we look and try to understand this, we go on to the very rich burials. This site is known for the Vix burial, VIX burial. And what they found in one single burial is astounding. And we've got a little plan. And I'll just sort of read through what they found there quickly. There's just so much items found in this one burial, like the Heimberg burials. There's almost as if there's a period where people are burying so much with people who have passed away for various different reasons, as maybe Margaret mentioned before the break. Now, this object found in the center of France, this is known as the Vix crater, an imported Greek mixing a vessel found in the famous grave of the Lady of Vix. Now, the Lady of Vix, there's a burial there, the Lady of Vix, associated with this site, again, the word oppidum, this settlement, this Hillfort, this extended site, which has very grand buildings like this one, which again, this doesn't look Iron Age. This looks very Anglo-Saxon, but this is an Iron Age projection of what some of these buildings actually look like. Now, there's the burial. There's this huge object associated with, again, you can see, folks, we were talking about earlier on that, it's almost odd that we mentioned Heimberg and we got wagons with four wheels. Well, that's indicated with the site up in North Yorkshire with four wheels. And this is a site which is near Paris with four wheels, right? Did somebody want to say something then? Anyway, so this is actually the excavation at this site, and hopefully I've got the plan of the excavation. Hang on a minute. Did I just have the plan a minute ago? Hang on a minute. Where's this little plan that I had? Hang on. I'm sure there's the plan up here. If not, I'm going to be very disappointed. No, the plan's not there. Oh, it was at the beginning, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm losing my cat. Oh, was it at the beginning? No, it wasn't. Hang on a minute. The plan isn't here. Where's the plan? Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go online and find the plan of the burial. I'm not happy with this. It's not there. So let's go and find this. If we could, I think there's a good plan on the Wikipedia page on this. So we just go the Vicks burial, and we will discuss what was found in this burial to give you an idea of how rich these burials were 600 years BC, and giving you again an indication of the trade. So we scroll down there. There should be a plan of the burial. Hopefully. Oh God, these are all the artifacts found there. All right, hang on a minute.
But which
For some reason it's missing from my images. So I'm going to see if I can track this down on the internet. But they've found so much with this burial. There's the plan.
Loading.
There is the plan of the burial. Now, the one thing is you've got this massive bronze, this huge object, and in here in this burial in 1958, they've again this bronze crater in the sort of left part of the screen there. They found lots of cups that have come from the Mediterranean. They found, as in the reconstruction, a four-wheeled vehicle. They've got loads of bronze objects. Again, four iron-wheeled vehicle. They've got more. They've got two spare wheels in there as well, which is interesting. They've got bronze sheeting in there. Loads of bronze objects. Various different bits and pieces for the wagon. Various iron objects, iron rods, probably for trade. They found in here various iron nails, various sort of loads of bronze objects. They're saying about 26 bronze knobs with hooks, bronze axle caps. Very much into the axle for here. 40 brooches, 45 amber beads, diorite stone beads, which are very hard stone. And wait for it, listen to this, 50 gold torques. 50 gold torques found in here, which is you could say unparalleled. But again, that point is this is almost a gesture to the trading world, that these people are associated with this wonderful site. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about this, then we're going to do Danebury. But I'm very aware that these presentations need to be ending by 7:15. But okay, special night. We'll go on for a little bit longer and maybe go just before, say about 9:20 or whatever. Did I say 7:15? No, I meant 9:15. But we go to about 20 past. This burial itself, the Lady of Vix, the Lady of Vix. This object there in the corner, that one there, is the largest known metal vessel from Western Europe. Solid metal vessel, bronze metal vessel. This dates from 500 years BC, showing the craft of the Greeks, found in the center of France. Now, if we move away from this now and we get some of those images, look at that. It's huge, right? It really is huge. So if we go away from here, and hopefully we can move the screen, and we can get to the images, talks like this again, 50 talks like this, and look at it, 24 karat gold talks, solid gold, not any copper in there, they're actually solid gold. Again, with this site at Vix, you've not only got the Oppidum, you've got the center of the site, which is the Hillfort. The site extends over 42 hectares, which is 42 very large, an acre is basically a footpatch. A hectare is 2.5 acres. This is a huge site. There's full of burials, loads of full of burials. And the one thing about this site is to think of what they're finding in the burials. And this being excavated in the 1950s. Again, this site is at its height, 500 years BC. And for whatever reason, it declines. The wealth here is incredible, is unbelievable. Burials that we've got intact, structures are absolutely incredible. This broadcasts the Celtic Iron Age world. Trade along the Seine, for example, trade it down south to Marseille, and again, this site incredibly changed people's understanding of the Iron Age, and it's still being understood. The discovery of archaeological material in the area, originally by, again, locally an amateur archaeologist, began in the 1930s. Increasingly systematic work throughout the following decades revealed tens of thousands of bits of pottery, brooches, jewelry, this amazing thing inside the look at that, how ornate that is. Again, the Greeks were highly skilled, and so were the Iron Age peoples of Europe, but this is something that would challenge a modern metallurgist to make today. And again, this translates to the Iron Age world being extremely advanced in its outlook. Again, this sort of blue area, that's where the settlement extended with again these over 40 hectares of landscape. This building, people, I think maybe Roger's point earlier on, how did we know that buildings looked like this? Well, if I can just give you a quick sort of a breather on that, you find these post holes aligned, and you find bits of evidence. You know that the larger posts are going to support a heavy roof, and you can see the pressure being placed into the ground and the stress and all the rest of it. Is a certain type of structure by that indicated from the post holes and whatever's left. This was discovered in 2006, finding these one. There were 5 of these buildings on site in the center of the site. These buildings, wait for it, again, giving you an idea of scale, though, that those are people there. Yeah. So the scale of these buildings, these 5 buildings, were a whopping 35 meters in length. Okay. So to give you an idea of 35 meters in length, it really depends how you look at the length of an acre, but that's the length of this is a third of an acre, and obviously, depending on how you look at an acre, over 100 meters. These are huge, 35 meters long by 22 meters, and it's estimated by the size of the post holes that the height of these buildings was a whopping 15 meters high. So again, these are as tall from the postal evidence in the ground as a Brock in Scotland. And let's make that point, that these buildings being 15 meters tall, right, 35 meters long, were some of the tallest structures that people will ever see in their lifetime, right? This is like seeing the equivalent of, I don't know, the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building in New York, right? Today, these are tall buildings, obviously, they're taller buildings on the planet, but these are huge buildings, 15 meters tall. These towered over the landscape. And that's another thing you could mention back to the points that we've been arguing. If these structures are so tall and they stand out over the landscape, people wanted other people to see these buildings. And obviously, if you've got tall buildings, it makes your site vulnerable. Or maybe these sites didn't see a sense of warfare. They saw themselves as projecting their ability to trade. Trade was that's the point we should maybe say more. Trade was more important than death. Trade was more important than warfare, right? That's a good point. So maybe these buildings were influenced by structures that were influenced by the Greek world. It's only the Greeks at this stage who were building structures like this. Okay, don't mention the pyramids, right? But the Greeks were now the people. Obviously, the pyramids are built over 2,000 years before these buildings. But however, Greek architecture was now ruling Europe as far as sort of Marseille, through to colonies in Spain, through to colonies in Sicily, and Greece, and all over the place. So they're being influenced. And they're saying that the interior space of these buildings was a whopping 500 square meters. Massive. Divided into rooms from the archaeology. So this achievement demonstrates a mastery of geometry and carpentry capable of freeing up vast interior spaces. The question is this: does this demonstrate hierarchy, or does it demonstrate people who were organized? Which is two different questions. You don't necessarily need to have hierarchy to build these things, right? This is not a Heinberg. This is not Danebury. This is not Stanwick. This is not Caliver Atrabatum, where we've got historical records of not historical records, what the Romans are writing about Caliver Atrabatum and so on. But the point is that if we look at other civilizations like the Zapotecs, the Olmecs, and the Toltecs in Central America, some of those people were organized into cooperatives rather than ruled by powerful rulers. Right. So are we seeing something very similar with this site? Does it necessarily mean that you've got hierarchy that builds these things? Is hierarchy going to build something like this? Are they going to be interested in serving the people by building 5 of these buildings? Geomagnetic surveying has revealed other large buildings at the foot of Mount Lassus, which is this landscape. The building and these buildings, 6 of these buildings, and strangely enough, this is an interesting thing. These buildings that they're getting an idea of in the archaeology are orientated east-west, with their main entrances facing towards the sunrise in the west. We're not going to argue it with that. The configuration of this is something various authors have suggested. Now, going on to the burial, right? This is the palace of Lady Vix, who was actually buried there. That's a female burial. That's a burial for a queen. Note, female matriarchal society. Now, the many finds from Lassus Oppidum from the Vic landscape of over 40 hectares clearly demonstrates the settlement's long and wide-ranging trade. And what we've got is that over the tens of thousands of bits of pottery, the tens of thousands of pots found, they've got 40,000 shards to represent that. The geometric designs, depictions of animals of the pots coming from central Greece, which is the Attic black figure vases, which obviously when you go to Greece, they sell these in shops, don't they? Many amphora and bowls could be identified as coming from the contemporary settlements. not so much as far as Greece, but actually made in southern France, Marseille, such as associated with the Greek settlements. Lots of fibulae, lots of brooches, coral, amber, earrings, statues of Lloyd George, slate bracelets, rings, glass ornaments, all these things being found. And Roger,
Yes.
guess what they're really lacking at this site?
Water.
No. There's very little weaponry being found across this entire site. So, does that agree with what you said and conflict with these sites being sites of warfare? Because if you don't have any weapons, the banks and ditches ain't going to defend you for long.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's fact, Roger. That is fact. We're not, little weaponry has been found as yet. A few axes, projectiles, nothing much else. So this site itself, and the gold and the wealth, funerary wagon wheels, more than one as a repair. And what they've done a reconstruction there, and you've got the treads around the outside and the boss, in the middle. So that's what the archaeology is telling us. And again, look at that. This is something. This is something out of Clash of the Titans, but then again, it is Clash of the Titans. Look at that. And so the burial of Lady of Vix took place around 500 years BC, although decomposition of the organic contents of the grave was nearly total. The gender of the individual buried has been interpreted not as a bloke, but as a woman. Many jewels, no weaponry. Her social status is not clear. Now, that's a good point. Is she a queen? Is she a princess? Or is she somebody who was just buried with the respect that Margaret would say was bestowed upon her? So she wasn't hierarchical. So again, it's like she's an important woman. She's an important broad, probably with red hair. There can be no doubt of a high status or a meaning or indication. But it's said, alas, she was 35 years old when she passed away. And there's our site there associated. The open circle is Heimberg, and the black dot is our site. Now, again, the interesting thing with a burial, for example, there it is that the inhumation, where she's buried, the chamber there to store the 50 talks, remember, and everything else in there is only 4 by 4 meters. It's not a huge area, right? Although the mound is 5 meters tall and spreads over an area of 42 meters, the chamber in there is 4 by 4 meters. It's a small chamber. It's not. So that's the thing. Do you interpret a small chamber as somebody who isn't a queen, or is somebody just special in society? Shouldn't a queen have a big chamber, but she has a small chamber? So this is interesting. So a body has been laid in the freestanding box. So this is a wooden box, a sort of a cart, with 4 wheels. Said it could be a chariot. So a jury itself, the one specific talk amongst all the talks that she was wearing is that one which is half a kilogram in weight, right? 480 grams. That is the specific one, not the 50, not the other 49, but this is the one that we see associated with it. Bronze talks, this is specifically with her, and 6 fibulae amongst all the other brooches that they found, 6 slate bracelets specifically for her, and the amber beads. So this is an assemblage of goods from the Italian and Greek world and further afield. And again, gleaming this archaeological evidence from this rich landscape tells us of this greater trade. And a trade with the Etruscan world, the little known Etruscan world, and the Attican material. So we can't really give a date for this, but we know it's somewhere in the 500 years BC. Now, let's talk about this. Let's talk of dimensions, not Dame. I want to do a bit of Danebury, but we're going to probably complete the rest of Danebury next week, so we will get onto Danebury. Let's just talk about this, right? Let's talk about this. Let's just talk about this one object, right, to give you an idea. So this is the largest and most famous of the finds from the burial. Well, naturally. Now, the height of this, right, is as tall as Roger. I'm going to read, because I'm reading this thinking this can't be right. It's 1.64 meters in height. And this is made of bronze. Okay, 1.64 meters in height, 5.4 foot. This is taller than Michelle, right? I don't know if any of you are 5 foot tall, right? But this is taller than you guys, right? And the weight of this, wait for it, was 460 pounds. The weight of a mini car without its wheels. This is the weight of a mini without its wheels. So this bronze crater, which is KRATERS, let's just do those measurements again. 208 kilograms, 460 pounds, the weight of a mini, right, without its wheels, and 1.64 meters high. So these bronze craters were vessels for mixing wine and water, common in the Greek world. Common, but they're usually made of clay. So the Vix crater has become an iconic object representing both the wealth, throwaway society, folks. This is if these people were able to bury this with somebody, it means that there's loads around, right? And obviously, over the years, these things were things were melted down. So, but it's not made of one molded piece. It's made of 7 pieces that have been put together. Now, again, more bits of this, and then we'll probably go over to Danebury to give an introduction for next week. So the vase prop are made of a single sheet of hammered bronze, the big chunk body of hammered bronze. That sheet itself, without the handles and the base, weighs a whopping 60 kilograms of the whopping weight of 208 kilograms. So the body itself weighs 60 kilograms. The bottom is round, and it's stored. Wait for it, right? You never guess how much liquid this stored, but I'm going to tell you. I don't know if you, some of you guys know what an IBC is. We've got 2 IBCs. These are big plastic water containers that stores 1,100 liters of water. This stores 1,100 liters of liquid in this container. Can you believe that? I can't, but this is where we're going with this. The handles were found as well, and the handles were obviously put on it. They'd been, I don't know, taken off it or whatever. This itself is absolutely amazing, right? And not to say any more, but the decoration on this is unbelievable. And again, if we look at where's that little thing, I didn't want to do Danebury, just introduce it. But look at that there. I tell you what, Clash of the Titans eats your heart out. You know those big those bronze statues. The Greeks were able. If the Greeks are able to create this, right? They were able to create the Colossus of Rhodes. Easy. This is 1.64 meters tall. Amazing. So finally about this burial, so the enormous variety of apparently, the Mediterranean goods and so on, getting an idea of the world that is in the Iron Age, right? The Greek world, the Etruscan world, the Egyptian world was very important to the European Iron Age. And we were important to the Greeks, because we traded objects with them. We were important to the up-and-coming Etruscan Roman world. The Romans were still living in Suez in Rome by 500 years BC. The civilization in Italy at the end was the Etruscans. The wealth of imported luxury goods at these various sites in Europe has suggested that there was a great connection, right? Although this is very rare, lots of these must have once existed, giving you an idea of the richness of our Iron Age on continental Europe. So finally, before we finish today, I want to go back to Britain, right? I could have done so much more about this site, but it was just giving you an overview, right? So let's go to Danebury. More about this next week, and let's just move to Danebury. So what we've got, I don't know if you guys are fans of the the detectorists. Remember, it's the Danebury Metal Detecting Club, right? And there is the Danebury Hillfort, or bank and ditched enclosure. So to give you an idea of this site itself is only an area of 5 hectares. So the site that we've just looked at in France, over 40 hectares, right? 5 hectares is quite small, but this site itself, again, is in its throes about 550 years BC, and Andy, it's abandoned by 100 years BC, which is odd. It's known as Danebury Hill Camp, and it was excavated between 1969 and 1988. And there's a lot. If anyone wants to look at Danebury, there's work written by Barry Cunliffe. There might even be a copy in our library. Now, this is very important, and the site has been extensively excavated. We got a nice few images, loads to look at for next week. Now, that's an aerial view, and again, some of the banks and ditches are really well preserved. We've got archaeological evidence of excavations going on in the 1800s, but we don't really understand much about that. But Judith is going to love to hear this. In the medieval period, they used to think that this was the home, because it's relatively circular, to King Arthur. This is another site linked to King Arthur. So again, the banks and ditches here, you've got them being substantially deep. And this was, even though we've got excavations in more recent times, there was other work here in the 1800s, and including the famous Danebury meteorite, which was actually found. And this is one of those said reconstructions. And again, I wanted to sort of compare this with some of those sites on the continent. This is an organized settlement, right? Again, you know my feelings on that. They would have proper pathways and trackways. Those square buildings are for storing grain, for storing lambs and maybe chickens. And that's another idea of reconstruction of the site. And that doesn't guide at all. But again, more about this Iron Age is that it looks very much not what we would usually associate with the Iron Age. So again, the widespread investigation of these sites were really starting to take place in the 1920s. And again, Barry Cunliffe excavating here proper in the 1960s. And this site itself is actually owned by Hampshire County Council. So they were able to excavate over here for 20 seasons. And they've excavated 57% of the site. So there's loads to think about. So what we've got wattle and daub timber houses like this being found. And again, they've excavated 57% of the site. And there's the interesting, intricate entranceway. Now, the intricate entranceway is sort of typical of Iron Age entranceways. Is it to show off? And there is a little bit of a plan again. I want to show you more about details about this next week. There is some evidence of some of the excavations, and look at the banking there. Look at the way you've got the beautiful cross section of the banking there. And obviously, with our site in West Wales, we're hopefully going to be doing a little section like this. It's going to be nothing like this, but this will give you an idea. Now, we don't have any historical references to the site, right? But again, before we finish today, look at the size of some of those post holes. And some of those storage ditches, that's a storage pit there. But look at the size of some of those post holes. That guy could jump up and down in some of these post holes, giving something of the height. Now, what we've got is that the ramparts themselves, the way the ramparts are organised, the way the ditches are organised. It's absolutely fascinating. We got these images to see and to understand. Now, to just give you a little bit of an idea why we're thinking that this is very similar to sites on the continent, is that it seems to have a sense of status. It seems to have people living here, Roger. There's people living at this site. It's not like Maiden Castle where there's small numbers of people living. It's a large grain silage area. It's not like Hod Hill, which is similar. There's proper people living here, right? It's not a massive population. It's not the thousands as we've seen on Heimberg and our site in France. It's probably more like 350 people. It's a sizable population. And what we've got at this site is not only evidence of important people living here, we've got evidence of the craftsmen living here, traces of the craft and industry on a large scale associated with the social elites. And they're also talking about shrines being found on the site as well. So there we go, section through. This is 1969. Those were the days of archaeology. Look at the way that's been excavated. Absolutely perfect, absolutely beautiful. And again, looking at how the ramparts are, and these are archaeologists who are cutting down trees to get to their archaeology. But again, that's giving you an idea of their entranceway and their proud entranceways and how the archaeology looks today. But again, that's the link with the continent. Rectangular buildings, large rectangular buildings, even though it's a smaller site, an idea of trade, an idea of links. You never know. These people may have sent goods to the centre of France or other sites for trade. And again, all of this that we've done with Hillfort so far on the continent brings us back to Hillforts in Great Britain, bringing us back to the likes of Danebury. And hopefully we can explain a little bit more about this next week. The one last thing, the gateway there, we've got evidence that the gateway has been burnt down, but people are still living at the site. So did they deliberately burn down the gateway because they didn't need it anymore? But then eventually the site was being abandoned in the 100 years BC. Why? People are living out in the landscape. If they know about Rome, which they eventually would do, all those questions. So we're going to finish there now, and we're going to find out if there are any questions from anybody. Stop share. And let's go on to everybody that may want to say something. So what we'll do, okay, what we're going to do, we will, Emma, we're going to be asking questions and stuff now. So if you want to get your thingamajig on, Judith, get your doodah on, Andy. So what we're going to do, we'll go to you in a minute, David. We're going to ask Roger first. Roger, anything you want to say?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Carl. I'm going to pack it now. Anyway, but a whole lot of new stuff there, and some of the quality of the reproduction goes back to this thing we discussed once. In the days of old, they had the intellect we've got without the materials, experience, and electricity stuff. So you can see it coming through with the limited means they had. Very interesting, especially that the Palace Vix, or the Vix, with the quality of that is stupendous.
No, I completely agree, Roger. I completely agree. And I don't know who we've just lost. Right. Okay, then, Roger, thank you very much. You're leaving us now, are you?
Yes, okay. See you all next week. Well,
Yeah, bye,
night,
Roger.
Night, Roger. Night, Roger. Thank you, Roger. What about you, David? Anything you want to say?
Do we know how near to each other in time these places were deserted?
Right, that's very interesting.
A plague would account for that. I think Anne's theory on plague is the best option. But
actually, keep there a minute, David, because that's a really interesting thing. So Heimberg and our French site, they seem to be being abandoned roughly about 450 BC, right? Our Maiden Castle, our Danebury in Britain, seem to be being abandoned around 100 years BC. Now, Maiden Castle hasn't got a massive population living there. They're living mainly in the valley, right? But Danebury, they're living actually at the site. And a plague would explain it. And there is one point with this. And this is a lot to do with temperature and change. Actually, you know what I said earlier on, that when you get warming conditions, you get certain types of diseases and plagues. Well, actually, there's something else. When the temperature collapses and it gets a bit cooler, right, you can have other types of illnesses and plague. For example, when we look at the year 1315, we look at medieval Europe slowly starting to collapse because temperature drops. We got famines. We got in the summer our crops being ruined because there's extensive rain, and then eventually we got the plague outbreak in Europe from 1346 onwards. So it could be that, yes, there are parallels with this, David, and it would make complete sense. Not warfare, but disease destroying the fabric of these sites. Unlike many things, you might get an outbreak of something in Europe, David, but it's not going to affect us because we're not at that level. But when we do get at that level, yes, something happens, and then we abandon these sites. And one last thing, David, is that when we look at Cirencester, at the end of Roman era Britain, coming into the 450s, we see deserted streets and people who have just been left dead in the streets of Cirencester. We find a body in a somebody had crawled into a hypercourse system and just died, right? And that was probably a plague. So yeah, and the reason why the Anglo-Saxons probably stayed away from the cities in Roman Britain is because they were places of disease. Like, you know, those films that we used to watch in the 1950s and 60s, David, about like hordes of Huns and Mongols coming from Europe, and they would avoid cities because they're full of plague. They weren't stupid, but we are, because we were still living in them. So yes, diseases are something that we don't talk about enough, and we are now. So yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are you staying with us or leaving us now?
I'll stay another 10 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever. Thanks.
That'll be brilliant, David. Appreciate that. Now, Judith.
Oh, I'm thinking about the gold is it Vix?
Yes.
Did you say there were how many of those gold talks did you say they'd found?
50, not
50.
He had one.
He
had one, but there were another 50 in there.
Yeah. Does anybody know where they are now? Have they all disappeared like all the gold from the Mold Cape, or are they?
Well, this is luckily after the war, and these are the French, and it's very likely that the French have put them in museums and shared them around France. The French are very different with their history. They do cherish it a little bit more than us. But if we had found all those talks as well, it'd probably gone in a museum. But I'm not exactly sure where they all are, and that's a really good question. Maybe that's a bit of research for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Okay then. Dreeny with a wonder. Dreena, did you knit that jumper?
No, my daughter got it for me.
Okay, no. Fair enough.
No, I haven't got any questions, but thank you. Fascinating.
Can I ask you about your jumper, Dreena? If you knitted that jumper, how long would it take you to do?
Oh, a few weeks, I would have thought.
So in other words, your daughter spent £1,000 on that.
Well done. Probably, yeah.
Oh, hopefully she did. You could tell her that from me.
That'd be good.
Carl's impressed. I really am. Okay, then let's hear from Andy and Anne in a minute. I want your friend next week, Anne. We need a right. Emma first, and Dave, the other David number 2. Anything you want to say?
No, Carl. Thank you.
Right. Say thanks to your dad for joining us, and we'll no doubt see you next week.
I will, absolutely. He's just having his dinner at the moment, so.
Okay, fair enough. Lucky for him. Right, Andy. Can I ask you guys? Am I having a blonde moment other than Roger just leaving us? Who else has left us?
Margaret.
We lost
Margaret went.
Yeah.
Oh, she's always full of stuff. All right. Anyway, sorry about Margaret. Right, Anne. Anything you want to say before Andy?
Uh, no, I think I thought it was very fast moving. This with all the things I discovered, I could hardly keep. I usually take notes, and honestly, I was scribbling like mad. And there was so much information there of the enormous amount of stuff that's found. Yeah, I could hardly get it down. Anyway, thank you for that. It was interesting, really was.
It was one of those things. I'm going to do some pancakes after this as well. Yeah, pancake evening. Right, okay then. Andy, you're the last one.
Yeah, just a couple of observations. The gold talks, I don't know whether you noticed, when we were talking about how the ones found in Britain were really quite tight and would have been very difficult to get on and off.
Yeah.
Those ones were much wider. So you could have worn them and then taken them off. So more practical perhaps, or maybe used for different things. But and the other thing was the palace at Vix there, the ladies' palace. How do they know it looked like that? I know they know it was a wide span because of the size of the post holes and the size of the thing, but the rest of it.
I'm thinking about pressure points and the size of the posts and so on. But obviously we know they were rectangle, so that's fine. We can get an idea of the height.
Yeah.
We can probably get an idea of the roofing material, but then, as David said last week with the other stuff, artists' impression, we can't be completely sure. But let's be a little bit more practical. We've got an idea, right? And if you're going to have a building like that, you're going to need light in it, right? If you're going to have it multi-storied, right? So you can not assume, there's going to be windows and for ventilation. So all of these things build up, but is an architectural license to show something like that. So fair cop, Andy.
Right. Okay. So they did. Yeah. That was just a bit of an artistic license, and fair enough. Yeah. Because they've got a lot of information from the various artifacts they've got of the design that they would have used, and I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that they may have put that design on the buildings as well. But I just thought maybe they had a bit more of it than they had said, but probably not.
The idea of the totem,
just because it's got big roof, big posts and things, doesn't mean they went up that high, does it? Either. So
there may have been a totem aspect that it projected that high, but then again, that's right. So yeah, that is a good point.
Interesting sights though. Yeah, that cauldron. Wow, that's astonishing.
Well, it's not astonishing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd go with that. And like you said, there must have been more.
Well, of course, and obviously
just a one-off. So.
Yeah, the template for that is not exactly. That's a lot of work to create a template, right? You're not just going to use one, right? Yeah. And if you've got the skill to do one, you're going to do more. It's like the Colossus of Rhodes. You're not going to just do one Colossus of Rhodes. We've got them all, do you want a Colossus of Rhodes? Yeah, well, mine's on the island of Kythera. It's not going to be known as the Colossus of Rhodes. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be making more of these, right? You can have that conversation. So,
yep, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, then that is absolutely brilliant. So I'm glad you guys have stayed with us tonight, and it's been a wonderful thing. So next week we will be doing more. So without further ado, if nobody else has got anything else to say, I'm going to say good night to everybody. So thank you, guys. Good night, David. Good night, Emma, and the other David. Good night, Trina, and Judith. Night, guys. Night, David. See you all soon. Bye. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Bye, guys. Bye. Night. We got you guys left. Oh, and Emma, it's only you left now.
I can't find my thing. Hold on a minute.
Oh. Anyway, thanks for joining us. No doubt you'll be in touch in a week by text.
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And
and the main thing is, did your dad enjoy it?
He loved it. He loved it. Here, hold on a minute. I'll take you over. Hold on a second. He could hear what you were saying.
He's got a bloody pork chop in his mouth.
I brought him a lasagna earlier. So go on then.
Next time, I'll eat before your program, so I'm not starving.
Oh, you silly
But I
man!
really
Well,
enjoy-
I'm a bit.
He'll eat before he was starving. Yeah.
I could be one of your followers.
He's going to be one of your followers, Carl.
Well, you've got to get him watching more of my videos and stuff, you
I
know,
will.
and my TikToks.
Well, he's not very good, but I'll have to. I'll have to bring him over, won't I?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention it tonight because most of these people are from Cumbria, but organising a trip to Killeen, we'll think about that, and obviously we've got the go. You can maybe come on one of our ghost walks. So we'll be talking about that this evening. So that'll be good.
Great. Yeah, no, we're well up for that.
I'm looking forward to when we can go out on a dig.
Oh,
I'm good at brushing off little bits of stuff.
That's his boyhood dream, Carl.
Well, actually, weirdly enough, we've got our site in West Wales. And if, no doubt in the summer, if you wanted to drive down, I know it's a little bit down, but you know it's. But then again, for me to get down to Chepstow the other day, it took 2 hours and 10 minutes. So it's the same journey from you.
Yeah.
So what the best way to do a journey like that is to set out about 7 a.m. and to sort of break in Brecon at a roadside doodah for a coffee, and then do the rest of the journey then, and it makes it a nice journey.
Well, it's a lovely drive up there. So beautiful drive.
So I'm sure it's doable anyway, and we do have a little excavation project down here which we could do some more work in the summer.
Oh, great. That'd be well into that.
As long as he's willing to get on his hands and knees, then that's fine.
Can we do that, Dad?
No, mister.
Hands and knees.
Oh yeah, easy. I love crawling about in the dirt, looking for little bits and pieces. It's one of my hobbies.
Well, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do.
Probably, he's probably fitter than I am, actually, Carl. To be honest.
It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, nice to meet you. I'm gonna dash now. I gotta tell 3 women that they've got some acting work with us on the weekend, and the other 3 that we've got something for them in the future.
Oh, great. Okay.
So
well, have a lovely evening. Thanks for that, Carl. That was brilliant.
My pleasure, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks for coming.
No worries. All right, thanks, Carl. Bye.
Night, guys.
Bye.
Night.
If I can work it, I'm going to try and go.
Okay, thank you. Night.
Oh, I nearly got it.
Anyway, anyone online, thanks for joining us. I don't know if there's anything in the chat. Nothing on the chat on 1, nothing on the chat 2. I want to do my pancake. By the way, I don't know if anyone's watching online. I've not had the technology to join you online, but if anyone's watching online, don't forget to like and subscribe, and just put a message in the comment box when we've closed, and I'll see if I can answer it. Anyway, thanks for watching online. And don't forget to join online as well. So I'm going to look at the chat box on 3, 2, 1. Chat box there's nothing. Chat box there 2 is nothing. Chat box there 3. I've got a cat here as well. Come on, cat. Hang on. That's not in the chat box. I got to close down this chat box as well. And no messages there. Okay. Nos da. Diolch yn fawr chi. Amor I gyd. Night. Diolch. Night. Night, folks. Night. I gotta end this live. It's not going off. Night, folks. Diolch yn fawr.